welcome to another episode of Coach's Corner, brought to you by your favorite global coaches, or at least the most passionate coaches in the world, especially focused on simulation training and AI coaching at SimTrain. Super excited. Today we have our guest, Tyler Orrell, on with us. Tyler and I met last year at CCW Vegas. Is that right, Tyler?
Yeah, that's right. We had a quick encounter there when I was checking out your
Checking us
products.
out.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, good. And look, the best part about Tyler, he spent his entire career in the contact center space, became a expert. I don't know exactly the enunciation there, but expert in CX. Uh, Often a keynote speaker. He speaks at a lot of conferences, and just a wealth of knowledge on CX and really around coaching and developing contact center talent. So Tyler, if I left anything out or I over elaborated, you can go ahead and correct us and finish your introduction for our audience today.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I've been in contact center for a long time, many years, and been able to lead and be a part of a various number of types of teams within the contact center to get a real holistic perspective on contact center, whether that's running operations, supporting operations, back office processes, things like that. Yeah, and that's where I've kind of built my career, and waking up to the fact that I've been in this space for quite some time, and what I like to do is I love to share experience that I've had and help develop and mentor people into that space as well, because I think that most people don't really recognize that contact center, it can be a career, and it has a vast amount of opportunities within it. And depending on your styles and what you do, it's a great place to build a career. So
Awesome.
that's it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd like to get started. Two topics around style, Tyler, today. First off, the fact that you and I texted each other this morning and said, "Hey, what should we wear?" Let's go with the glasses and the baseball hat.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh,
Yeah, I think yours looks better, so we'll go with that.
we'll pretend for a minute. But one of the things on style. So when we have folks come on, they talk about the key to kind of understanding and learning about the individual and personalizing their approach to coaching. But as an operations guy, especially a contact operations person with so many CX people that you deal with, how important in your mind is it to really follow a standardized coaching approach or a standardized operating process around coaching versus trying to tailor it and personalize it for each individual? What are your thoughts, Tyler?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. If you have a small enough team, you can be very engaged in a lot of ways and really customized in that process. As your teams start growing and you start getting larger and larger contact centers, you have to organize your team in ways that you can influence the coaching process across that larger set, whether it's within your own small team, then that trickles down. My personal perspective is you should start always with the baseline or the foundation of coaching as a consistency, and then it needs to be grown into specifically to the individual. And I'll give you an analogy. A lot of people golf. I golf, and I've done it my whole life.
Big weekend for golfers this
Yeah,
weekend.
that's right. Yeah, exactly. Get the Masters going, and depending on who wins, someone's going to make some good money. But so think about that when you golf. The general goal of golf is to get the ball into the hole in the least number of strokes. The person who does that most consistently and with the least number of strokes wins. However, the process in which you get to that is individual. So I think of
Yep.
it like sport, like coaching sport, whether you're golf or you play basketball, you play baseball, there's a goal, and that goal, whether you're in business, is to process the customer's need or transacted engagement and sell a product. How you get to that point, you have basic processes, but each individual person does that slightly differently. And it's important for leaders to understand that, whether it's leading leaders or leading individuals. So I like to start with the I like to start with the foundation of training and understanding that, standardized, like what do we have to do? What are our goals? And then each person should be individualized to their needs so that we can optimize. The goal is to hit your whatever that goal is for you, and you have to identify that within that individual so they can improve that, day over day. So
Yeah, I love that. I have two follow-on questions for that. I'm going to do one at a time. But I
okay.
love how you take the analogy of golf, right? So I need to get a clean, contact on a ball so it goes the right distance in the right direction and consistently every time. But how I get to that clean contact position, it's gonna differ for each individual golfer, but it can't differ so much that I can need to be consistent, right? So I love how you say standardization, having a process is really, really important when you coach. But then obviously an individual and how they internalize that and how they process that standard in their own way is what sets them apart, right? That I think that's awesome advice too, Tyler, as you think about not just leading, individuals and coaching them, but the coaches that are driving those teams as well. Great
Mhm.
advice because of I think of your background having so many people that you've developed. One of the two questions I'm thinking about, right, is when you talk about coaching leaders, right, and helping them develop their teams, right? In your mind, what are some of the thoughts or behavioral patterns of a leader that sets apart the really successful ones from those that just struggle, to try to become leaders over time?
Yeah, that's a good question too. I think when people come into people leadership or they think they want to be in people leadership, there's generally a perception that I want to be in charge of something or I want to be in control of something.
Yeah,
I think the reality of people leadership is that you're putting yourself behind that and you're putting your people in front for their success. That is in my experience and how I think is my goal is to improve and help my individual leaders improve so that they can go out and be the best that they can be. So the behavioral patterns I find are people that are selfless in terms of what they're trying to accomplish. All leaders have goals. We all have goals. Whether that supervisor is like, I need to improve my team's CSAT scores, or I need to improve reduce my team's handle time, or I need to they're identifying what's consistent on their team. They're identifying what's not consistent across the performers, but they're doing it in a way that is helping that individual. They're not doing it for a purpose of their own. And so I think their outcome will follow the process they go down. And if they have the right mindset, and I feel like the mindset is like selflessness and empathy towards the outcome for the individual, I think that's where the best leaders uh, see more success than those who don't put them first, right? So I'm focused on my goal. I'm going to drive that individual on my team to my goal, whether and no matter however I think they should be driven towards. That works for a little bit. That
yeah,
can work for a little bit. But you're not gonna create a lot of employee engagement in that. You're not going to create a lot of desire to improve your team's outcomes. So yeah, I mean, obviously there's outliers in that space, and I don't think you need to be super dynamic. I don't think you need to be gregarious in how you approach your team. I think you need to be consistent and you need to put their needs first and really truly that they believe that you have their back. So I mean, that's where I would say the best leaders that I've experienced, and even my mentors in my career have how they've coached me and how they've helped me in my career. So I mean, that's you know what I think is the kind of the driver of improvements of how the supervisor or the coach does it.
yeah. No, I love it. And you're reinforcing what you were saying before around consistency being a critical element of having your process and a standard approach. but then bringing that down to the individual level to really help an individual contributor internalize that and make it part of what they do, and doing it through being selfless and having a high level of empathy for their goals and their outcomes. I think that's pretty critical. And you mentioned engagement being the key, right? You're motivating me
Yeah.
enough to stay engaged, not just in my job, but the things you're coaching me around. I love that. And do you have any advice, right? Because obviously contact center is excessively high KPI standards. It's really performance metric based in terms of
Mhm.
measuring outcomes and success. Just like
Yeah.
golf, right? How many strokes did it take to get the ball in the hole? It's a very numbers centric piece. Any advice for, early coaches, the folks who are breaking in, on ways that they can focus more on the behaviors and more on the things that actually drive meaningful outcomes versus just trying to coach to the numbers, right? And how
Yeah.
they can focus on the behavioral aspects of it.
Yeah, I think that the number one thing is you still have to put the KPIs and the numbers as the clear goal and outcome that you're trying to achieve. So I'm big on outcome follows process. And you're going to get to where your goals are if you have the right process and you follow along. A new coach, I would say they have to really understand how those KPIs are driven based on the way they coach somebody. And you have to get to know the people on your team to a degree to really understand how you're going to be able to coach and develop those people. So,
Yep.
another analogy, like let's say baseball. I mean, I played baseball in my life too. And you have so many different styles of how to motivate people, whether some people like to be motivated quietly, some people like you to get in their face, that type of thing. You need to know who likes one way or the other, right? So if you're in everybody's face all the time, you're gonna no, it's not gonna work, right? So you've got to get to know your team, and you've got to try and figure out how to marry up their individual needs with those KPIs and set clear expectations as to what you're trying to achieve and get buy-in on that. So the goal is to have X number of widgets processed, and someone needs to get to that and they're underperforming. You got to dig into why they're underperforming, understand the reality of those widgets and what they're doing, and then um, coach them to be successful and celebrate them when they hit those goals, when and if they hit those goals, right? So I mean that's
Yeah.
huge. It comes back to just being, being selfless in your process and making sure individuals on the team feel like you're there for them, because that's what, like I said before, what I feel like good leaders are is they're there to lead and to coach, not to further them. You're going to further yourself to some degree if you're a good coach, but you're going to do even more when your team is on your side too and they feel like you got their back. So
Yeah, and being a leader of a startup organization, right? You're so focused and obsessed at hitting those outcomes that often you forget to celebrate even the minor victories, right? I think that's a deficit in a lot of leaders' games. So I appreciate that. And the things that you do to know your team and get them to buy into where you're going,
yeah.
super important. I love that. And do you feel as though when you do find a challenge and something where performance is dipping either at the individual or at the team level, where do you like to start? Do you like to start with driving the accountability back? Do you like to start with maybe the mindset of the people who are performing, or is it really a process thing when you really want to dig in and fix a performance gap or something that needs to adjust?
Yeah, that's good. Um, One, you really have to understand the specific metric and KPI that you're trying to coach to, and look around and see what are the outcomes that you're getting from your general group of people or people that are not on your team even. So
Yep.
you can do that through, peer relationships and peer coaching, peer discussions, uh, communicating, asking for help. That's a great start. Like I have this individual, let's say, that I just can't seem to get over the hump of this metric. I've sat with them, I've talked to them, we've looked at numbers, we've tweaked up their process. Someone else look at it with you, give you another set of eyes. And I think that can you have to, again, if you're in it for yourself, you're gonna have a harder time asking for that. And if you're in it for helping that individual, it doesn't matter who you ask to get help from and engage in. That's really where
Love
it
it.
comes back down to what are you doing to help that individual on your team to, improve. So I think you need to have, as a leader, where you have KPI and metrics that you're accountable to, you have to be very intimately aware of where those numbers are at any given time. So I'm
Yep.
big around like having a single point of data that if that number ebbs and flows, that you know what next steps to move forward on. So if it goes up, okay, what's happening? It goes down, but if it's staying flat, you can do something different. But if it's a critical component and it moves in a way that's negative, what do I do? If it moves in a way that's positive, what am I doing to improve that? What have I been doing with that individual? So I think that's
Yep.
that's pretty much, as you dig in, you have to understand your data and you got to bring it back to the conversations and the emotional engagement you have with those people on your team.
Absolutely. It was kind of funny as you were getting towards the tail end and the ebbs and flows, and I was saying yes, yes a couple times because I was absolutely agreeing with you. And then I was in the back of my mind, I was thinking about my marketing team doing these little cuts because you're saying great stuff, and someone have to hear me going, yeah, yeah, yeah. I was like, oh, stop it. Don't keep verbalizing your agreement. But I love how you talk about, hey, as a team leader, someone who's coaching people, I need a team around me too, right? And mentors that I can lean in on and maybe get some guidance and advice, which is big for folks who are startups and trying to build something new in a new market. Seeing people who have done it before is big. I think one of the things you and I have in common is we have worked at startups, right? But you've also worked at some major brands and some huge corporations too, and honed your craft in both ends of it. What do you think from your perspective, having seen it at both angles? Where do you think the biggest breakdown is, by trying to connect strategy with execution and really driving a coaching culture and rhythm, if within the operations of those businesses? Really, is there a conflict between execution and strategy in your mind, or not really?
I think there can be. I think when you compare the two in terms of like enterprise level versus startup or small business, I feel that every person on your team, whether it's a rep on the phone or it's a leader, has to you have to be connected to the outcome of the company has, the goal, the mission, the strategy. And as a leader, we need to tie those strategies and those missions back down to each individual's level. And so an agent on the phone, like, why am I on the phone? Like, why is a customer service rep on the phone doing that? Like, well, you could say, well, I just field calls all day and deal with people's problems, or I'm actually helping these people do this thing, and that is the goal of the company I'm at. And then I think that the difference between those two is when you're a smaller organization, your reps and your teams can be closer to the overall mission and value from an organization perspective. When you're a large enterprise, whether it's a company like Nationwide Insurance, where it's a huge organization, or even a Quinn Street, where it's a very large organization as well and a different model,
Yeah.
you have to find ways in which to connect those goals and missions of the company so that you can uh, so that every day, when I think that creates a great deal of engagement with individuals, and whether it's leaders or reps, and so that helps them to improve on executing on what they're trying to do. So they show up and they need to execute on improving this KPI. Why am I doing that? Because I can see how it ties to this company goal and these company factors. Now that could be generational. That could, you have different. different perspectives around what you're doing for your company or what the company's goals are or why I'm even here, right? Am I working because
Yep.
I just want to have a job so I can go to, I can do my art at night, or is this a stepping stone for me to get into a financial services environment where I can learn and cut my teeth on that, and then I can springboard into these very large organizations? That's the or teams, and that's where I think contact center can be a very uh, great, you know, building ground for people because you can kind of get your foot in the door in a lot of these places. So yeah, I would say the size of the organization does factor into that, but that's really a focus on that leader and the individuals that are responsible for that division to push that strategy and mission down into your team so everybody feels when they come to work they're doing what they're helping, not just the customer, but why they're helping the customer. I think it's huge.
Yeah. Either we're changing the world or we're making the world a better place, right? From a big organization to a little. But either way,
Yeah.
aligning what someone does every day to the that mission, that vision, that goal. Yeah, that's awesome. And one of the things you were talking about is this concept of like this data driven, right? It's metrics based and we have data. And I've listened to you a few times talk with the folks at Level AI, right? And
Mhm.
which is a very data driven. We're going to take analytics. We're going to identify where we have to fix some problems in operations and drive a coaching rhythm, based on that, which is awesome. And we try to align with as much QA and performance management data as we can to deliver personalized coaching, at that level based on what everyone's trying to improve and accomplish. What do you think with all this technology and all this data and all this, big opportunity to individualize and personalize coaching? What do you think the biggest gap is today still,
Mhm.
despite having so much data and AI and all this technology?
Yeah, it's a great one. More data is not necessarily better.
Hmm.
I'm just gonna say that. You have to products, you have to have products or understanding of how to distill that all of that data into actionable, useful steps so that you can actually improve. Otherwise, you're going to go from, let's say QA, like you're saying, 10 QAs a month per person to you're going to record and score every single call they take in the month.
Right.
You're going to get a great sample now of just exactly how that rep is behaving and what they do. But if they're taking, 5,000 calls a month, that's a lot of information. You have to be able to have the ability to sort out patterns, sort out details, and understand false positives and false negatives and all the stuff that goes along with a human speaking with a human, right? And um, I feel like that's where the best products shine is they not just say, hey, I can give you all this data, but they help you filter it out so it's useful for coaches, whether using AI to give you summarized information about that, or you can query the information or data. That's where I think a lot of it lives is that if you just have a big pool of information, but you can't access it very easily, or it's very, disjointed, you're going to be in a worse place, in my opinion, because you're going to feel overwhelmed with what you're looking at. And so really comes down to, again, like what's the purpose? What's the mission? And then how do I help my individual on the team? And then you can go figure out on their calls, if they're 5,000 calls a month, you know, what's their customer engagement? What's their sentiment that they generate off of that call? Where's their time filler? Are they using a lot of ands, buts, like that type of thing? You can find that
Yep.
information out pretty quick, and then you can help them with that detail. So
Yeah. So one of the things that's funny as you were talking about going from 10 calls a month to all the calls a month, I wrote down the number 700 and then you said 5,000, right? So from a diversity perspective, diversity of role and job, right? There is
Yeah,
folks that do 700 calls a month and there are roles that do 5,000. You
yeah,
also mentioned another type of diversity on the call today, which is generational, right? Really identifying why an agent is coming to work, what their drive is, what's in their belly, right? And it might be different based on the age they're at or the point in their career. And I
yeah,
know in your background, right, in the time you've spent in the contact center, you've led, onshore teams of folks within your four walls that come to show up at work every day. You've led
yeah,
some offshore teams across the other side of the globe and even nearshore, right? Just
yeah.
supporting your teams from a perspective of coaching. And dealing with all those different types of diversity that we just mentioned, how do you maintain that consistency that you were telling us about at the beginning of our conversation, right? And how important that process is. How do you maintain that while also, having enough respect for that diversity, whether it's cultural, it's operational, it's the type of role or generational?
Mhm.
What's the best technique or tactic to do that, Tyler?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure there's a best, but I think the more removed your leadership is from the agent taking the phone call, the more communication there needs to exist.
Mm,
And so when we say, "Oh, I'm a remote agent," or "I'm nearshore or offshore," that require that requires more visibility, more communication, and so you're just not a talking head twice a month that shows up on a meeting. When you're in the office in four walls, you stand up out of your desk or your office or whatever, and you can walk right through the call center taking calls. Hey, how's it going? How are you doing? I heard
yep,
that call and that was amazing. Or yeah, how was your weekend? You got to find different ways and methods in which to do that. And that just comes back to why am I here as a leader? What am I, are they, are my team a nuisance that I have to deal with and for the next 3 years before I get a promotion to something that I'm not teaching or coaching them? Or is this a, like every day I'm gonna leave it all on the field type thing and figure out ways um, to help them. So yeah, more communication is key and finding communication methods to do that, whether it's technology that exists, like we have, whether it's Slack or Teams or other team communication tools. I think it's critical that you do that because you can easily lose culture or individuals by being absent from that situation.
yeah. No, communication, that's huge. I love calling folks in our CX organization or in our technology team, right? On Teams or WhatsApp if they're in India or the Philippines or South America. And I love calling them during the day. It's like, oh wow,
Yeah,
why is the CEO calling me? Right? I
yeah,
just had a
right.
quick question I wanted to ask you, right? So but I love the change in style because I get it's just emailing people, it's just like, oh, it just gets a little bit
Yeah,
rote from that
yeah,
perspective.
agree.
Additionally, I've been keeping score, Tyler. The first couple questions I asked, you said, "Hey, that's a good question." So I was like, "Oh, I'm going to keep score." I thought I would get a good question on that diversity one, and I didn't get it. I'm 4 out of 7 right now. I got, I got 4 good questions out of 7. So
Yeah,
here's
that
my
one is.
final question. What's that?
Uh, yeah, and I was maybe in my mind I was like, oh, I'm saying every one of your questions is good, Dan. So
I'm still batting over 500, right?
yeah, you're doing good. You're doing
Yeah, I'm not
good.
not at par, but for the last question, I'm actually curious, right? Is as you look back on your career, right? And we've been talking about you as a leader and guiding and having peer mentors around you. What about from the opposite, perspective, as you were developing your career and shaping the direction that you were going into as a leader and someone who's going to coach, and giving and receiving feedback? Is there a time, either an individual or a certain time in your career that you can point to that really shaped you as a leader and how you coach people today?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say earlier in my career, I definitely had, when I was at Nationwide, I had access to quite a large pool of individuals in the work that I was doing from an executive leadership perspective within the organization that I was in, property and casualty organization. Amazing, amazing leaders that were accessible
Mm,
and took an interest in your personal development and took an interest in you as an individual. And I think too, it also comes down to you as a person or you as an employee. Your desire to improve or grow is a great. You have to have that as a starting point for let's say to have a great mentoring relationship. But I had many people in my career that helped me and took an interest in me. And like I've shared before with others, how you get to these places, how you get on these journeys from like started in the call center taking phone calls and selling property and casualty insurance policies. That was where I started as an agent to where I'm at today. And there's an element of luck. There's an element of um, desire and focus and grit that goes with it. Um, and sometimes those combined together is what produces those opportunities. You have to be willing to jump into those opportunities. So I would say there's been a couple key people in my life that have really pushed me in a way that sharpened me for leading and being who I am today um, in business. So that's kind of, I would say, yeah. I mean, I think the number one thing for people looking for like, oh, I want to have a mentor and I want people to help me. I think it's personal. You have to take your own. You have to take your. You have to be wanting to lead that mentor-mentee relationship as the mentee. I
mm.
think a mentor is going to engage to the level that you're engaged as the mentee. So it's not like, okay, I'm sitting in front of you and you have all this experience, and now what's your magic sauce? What's your secret sauce? Yeah, like
Give it to,
put it on
yeah,
me. And you're
right.
like, doesn't work like that. You gotta be willing to take risks. You gotta be willing to fail. You gotta be uh, open to feedback and changing things about yourself potentially that aren't aren't easy to do. And so I'd say yes. I think all new leaders and all leaders should be constantly on the lookout for people in their lives that might be able to help them grow, and then doing the same thing the other way. Every leader should be developing and coaching and mentoring people in their life that are on their teams or in other parts of their organizations to really learn that. So,
I love that. I guest lecture at a couple of colleges, and I always tell the students, I say, hey, you'll be really surprised, especially if you do it in a thoughtful, meaningful way, how many people will say yes to you when you ask them for help, right? And becoming a mentee is nowhere near as hard as most people think it actually is.
right.
But I actually love the advice, right? Is as a mentee, you're the leader. You lead that relationship. I'm going to add that to my dossier and my quiver, if you don't mind, Tyler. But
Yeah, for sure.
all
Absolutely.
right, cool. And look, I kind of lied earlier because I said last question, but some of my favorite Coach's Corner episodes are ones where we're talking and I'm taking a lot of notes here and I'm looking at my notes going, man, this is a book. Like this is a structure of a book that Tyler should write, right? Like coaching is a consistency, is a process that requires a consistency that's focused on behaviors, right? You have to take it down to the individual level and really get
Yeah.
them to buy in, right, at that level to what you're trying to deliver to them in a way that you're selfless and you have a high level of empathy, but you tied it back to what's in their belly, right? And what drives them and then what drives you as a leader. I just think that's an awesome story and it's a really cool arc. I can't wait to read it when it comes out. Is there a book already out, Tyler? Did you write one already?
No, no, I don't know if I can sit still enough for that kind of thing in my career. I got always something going on. So, uh, those are maybe some of the AI tools I can use fan
Yeah.
to help you with
Yeah.
that.
Heck yeah, we could definitely help you. We have another AI called Maho, Maria. She's a great writer, and she could maybe
Okay,
take this coach's corner and help shape it into a book for you.
I'm down
But
with
so
that. I'm down with
all right, cool,
that.
awesome. So last question though, for real this time, to
Okay.
wrap it up. Any books, any podcasts, any resources you would suggest to our listeners that really helped influence your thinking around coaching, or just in general from a business perspective that you loved or love?
Yeah, I mean, I always come back. I love to read. I mean, I've read so many books on leadership and development and organization that to put my finger on a couple would be, I can't say one. I'm going to say I got a few of them in mind.
Cool.
Grit by Angela Duckworth.
Yep.
I mean, a lot of people know that one. That
Yep.
one's huge to me. Leadership and the Art of Deception is a pretty cool book. It's a fable type book, which I love in business. Um, and it kind of challenges your thinking around how you lead and why you lead. And then lastly is The Five Dysfunctions of a Team, Patrick Lencioni. I've actually put that framework into. I actually led one of my teams in at Nationwide using that framework, exact framework, and that was the best experience of a team that I've ever had because of the level of honesty and connection that created. And that team surpassed every goal imaginable that we had. And so those three. So I mean, there's so many. Every book I try and take away a little nugget,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
But when I have to come back to like what's on my shelf still, how many books have I like sent away to, you know, put it in a box and sent it somewhere, right? Or given it away. Those ones
Yep.
stay. Those ones stay. And I go through them on occasion and just like, oh yeah, I remember that. And then, but yeah, I would say also as leadership, you should constantly be learning and trying to find ways in which to get better and to improve yourself.
Yeah. Well, enjoy. You mentioned the golf. Enjoy the Masters this weekend, right? As an ex-athlete myself who actually still plays old man baseball,
Okay.
I see some books from Tony Robbins that are sitting up on my
Oh,
shelf, right? And I
yeah,
I go in and peek at them every now and again. It was this thing where how do I take that confidence I had as an athlete and transfer that to a
yeah,
business relationship? It was a struggle for me early, and he really helped me make that connection. So I really love the grit. I love the art of deception and five dysfunctions of a team. So Tyler, I really love
yeah,
this conversation too. This was fun.
yeah. And thank you, Dan. I appreciate you having me on and the great questions. All of them
I was
great.
4 for 8. I took the final score. I'll take that. I'll take that any day of the week.
I mean, you're a Hall of Fame baseball player, 4 for 8.
I'll take it. Absolutely. Oh man. Cool. Awesome. Everyone, hey, have a great weekend and thanks for joining us on Coach's Corner. Until next time, continue coaching and developing people to their fullest. See you guys.